Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name's Joe. In this video, we'll be doing a first look at the game Rebel Fury. This is 3 battles from the American Civil War. This is from GMT Games and is designed by Mark Herman. This is the first game in the Civil War Heritage Series, as you can see here, Civil War Heritage Series Volume 1. Now, the system itself was debuted by Mark Herman in the C3I magazine game Gettysburg. So I have played that game and it is a good game. This is a fairly straightforward system, so it's not overly complex, and it is a good 2-player system. So we're going to take a look inside the box here in a moment, but let's look at the back. So here you see it says, are you a McClellan or are you a Grant? Are you a Bragg or are you a Lee? Are you tactically methodical or explosive, strategically conservative or daring? Play Rebel Fury and find out. So actually this does mention that it was, Rebel Fury is a refined version of Mark's 19th century low complexity game system as featured in his C3I magazine's Gettysburg and Waterloo designs. I have not played Waterloo, but I did play Gettysburg. In this system, you're placed in the role of the notable Army commanders, and they list Grant, Lee, Longstreet, Jackson, Sherman, Thomas, Pope, Bragg, Rosecrans, Burnside, Sedgwick, and Hooker. Rebel Fury is not a traditional hex encounter game where each side moves, attacks in sequence. Instead, Rebel Fury captures the flow of interactive maneuver where the points of assault are driven by your decisions, not the system. You are advantaged if you can turn your opponent's flank while controlling the tempo of the battle through more efficient maneuver. So yeah, you're maneuvering and setting up for assaults. It does take into account things like terrain, artillery support, friendly infantry support, senior leadership. Will help determine which side is advantaged. The greater the advantage, the greater your chances of success to capture the ground. Failure can result in retreat or disorderly routes with broken status that drive the battle's outcome. Unlike other designs, you control the intensity of the Army's attack. For example, if you are a McClellan, you can call off an offensive to preserve your forces, while a Grant presses the attack to achieve his strategic objectives and victory. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole back here, but you get the picture. You can see there are 3 maps, one for each of the campaigns in the game. Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville, Chickamauga and Chattanooga, and the Wilderness and Spotsylvania. Counter samples, Union, Confederacy. The unit scales, division, brigade-sized infantry and cavalry units with regimental detachments. The map scales half a mile per hex. Time scale half a day per turn. It's a level 3 complexity, so as I mentioned, fairly low complexity game. It also says that on the box, of course. And solitaire suitability is a 5. You can solitaire it. This game really shines, or this system. I haven't played this yet, obviously. It's still in the shrink wrap. But this system really does shine in a 2-player play. So I'm going to open it up and we'll take a look at what's inside the box. All right. Okay. So, baggies, always appreciated. I do use these pretty much fairly often. Then we have our dice. So you can see here the dice. We have 2 10-sided die and then a die with some special symbology on it. It's a 6-sider, but it has special symbols. Has special symbols on it. I didn't even realize I had pulled that too close to my body and wasn't in camera shot. But here you can see 2 10-sided, a blue and a gray, appropriately enough, and a red, this 6-sided die with different symbols on it. All right. And of course, the playbook, and we'll look at that in a moment. I usually like to begin with the rules. So we'll take a look at the rules of play. So here are the rules of play for Rebel Fury. Okay, table of contents. This is a 22-page rulebook. Well, the index is on page 22. Our components list, which we saw on the back of the box, I believe, maybe. The rule book, the playbook, 2 sheets of counters, 3 22 by 34-inch paper maps, 2 player aid cards, 1 off-map display, 1 game turn display, 2 10-sided dice, and 1 special 6-sided die. right? Nice image of a sleeping sentry here. So setup, introduction and setup, right? And then you have basically what the symbols on the counters are, right? You always see this in every game. What the heck is what the heck does all this stuff on the counters mean, right? Pretty straightforward. You got your divisions, your HQs, your detachments, and your heavy artillery. So you can see you've got a battle code, a setup hex, the core designation. So who, basically that really boils down to who's the commander. In this case, it would be Stoneman on this side, and the name Pleasanton. So this would be Pleasanton's Cavalry Division. Over here, we have a Confederate Infantry Division, Battle Star, Movement Allowance, and this is Hood's Corps and Johnson's Division. The HQs, we have Thomas over here and also here, right? But you can see turn of entry, the battle stars. We'll talk about that in a bit. Battle mode indicator and its command range. The army, which has no game effect. That's just an identifier. Then our detachments and our heavy artillery. Scale, key concepts. You do have zones of control. Divisions are a larger counter, detachments small counter. Detachments have a traditional zone of control that consists of all adjacent hexes unless interrupted by terrain like rivers, right? A division has both a zone of control and a zone of influence called ZOI. So basically, it's like a second expansion. They influence 2 hexes away. So you can see here, pretty straightforward, easy to understand. Divisions, being a larger unit, have a wider area of effect, essentially. Then your key concepts, right? Rebel Fury does not use traditional movement points, but uses hexes of movement. Divisions can be in one of 2 formations, maneuver or battle. And you can see battle formation, any division can move 1 hex. So basically you're set up for fighting. You're not going to be able to kind of march your way over distances. You're set up to fight in this formation. In this one, it's more maneuver, so you're kind of approaching the battle, approaching combat. Infantry divisions can move 4 hexes, and extended march can go along the roads for 8 hexes. Cavalry can move 6, and with extended can go 12. That's a key part, and that's why I call it a key concept, right? It's key concept 2. Key concept 1 is your zone of control and zone influence. Key concept 3, the only unit that's move across the hex grid are division. Detachments cannot move but are placed during the command phase. So detachments are basically static, is what that means. Key concept 4, only divisions that are in an enemy zone of control can attack. So you have to be with, basically adjacent to an enemy unit. Detachments can't attack but can be attacked. So you can kind of look at a detachment as something of like a roadblock. Make it a little harder for the enemy to get at you because they do exert a zone of control. So that is important. Now, definitions. You have definitions of all the terminology and everything that we're going to see in the rules here. Your sequence of play. Very straightforward. The command phase. So you have your sequence of play, and then it's going to go through each one, right? And it's got the case system. So command phase is 4, and then you have the various steps. Initiative is 4.1, HQ redeployment 4.2, etc. Your detachment placement, recall for detachment, you can always pull it off if you wish to. You can't. You can remove them even if they're in a zone of control or surrounded, and then they can be placed again on the next turn. Like I said, they essentially operate as roadblocks, so you don't necessarily need to wait for the enemy to attack them. You can always pull them off. Off-map step, which occurs in some scenarios. Then we have an organization phase. Then your movement phase, right? So part of organization that I probably should mention is the field works. You can build field works, obviously. And then you also have disengagement. Movement, you have to be within command and movement. So every commander has every HQ basically has a command range. Yeah, see, it says design note. Command represents the Army's center of gravity. Each division is under core leadership that is factored into the ability for divisions to conduct local operations. So you're going to have your core command, and your divisions need to be within range of their core command to actually do things, basically, is what it boils down to. How movement works. You've got road movement and extended march that we saw when we were looking at the counters earlier. You can enter units from off map. Here we have an example of the extended movement. So you have a road, and so these units can move a lot further on the roads. As you would expect, it's easier to walk on a road than it is, or ride your horse. It's easier to do that on a road than it is to go through terrain, woods and so on. May slow things down a whole lot, right? So yeah, you have a nice example of various movement here. There's an optional analysis paralysis. If each player makes 20 consecutive moves, 40 in total, without a division from either side entering a zone of control, then end the movement phase immediately. This rule should never come into effect, and hence it's optional. It's basically a variant of a chess rule. Mark Herman, of course, he's a chess guy too. So this is not really a surprise, but he says, on 2 rare occasions I've seen players adamant that they were not going to pass. Both players just pushed the same unit back and forth in a classic I'm not going to blink standoff. Well, I found it amusing. This rule is added to maintain the pace of play, right? So the game doesn't advance if you don't do something. Like, you need to engage, basically. So that's a cool rule. The attack phase, how that works, you have mandatory attacks. There are 3 situations where units must make an attack. And those 3 situations here, again, I don't want to read the rules to you guys too much. Heavy artillery, attack resolution, how you determine artillery support, your battle rating based on things like troop quality, artillery support, leadership, etc., core division integrity. Mark is real good about including design notes, so you can kind of see how he thought this through. He's also really good at closing holes in rules, so that's always a good thing. The defender battle rating, your tactical position determination, and the possibility of having your leader become a casualty. Then you resolve the result and the explanations of all the various results, such as blown, breakthrough, disaster, eliminated, retreat, etc. Counterattacks, pursuit, and then your end phase. Now you have an extended attack example. So again, this is going to show you how attacks work. Very useful. And then additional rules for things like artillery and heavy artillery, entrenchments, fortifications, field works, pontoon bridges, and your victory conditions, which apply to all scenarios. Like I said, he's good at closing rule holes, and this would be an example here as a continuation that I do not want you or your opponent to use the edge of map as some Twilight Zone special case to block reinforcements. You also cannot use it to steal a victory that you did not earn. Therefore, you cannot form your army on or very close to an entry hex to block your opponent from tracing across the map to that location. If you want to stop your opponent, you will have to accomplish your goal further from the map edge. So, Mark Herman is obviously a very accomplished designer. He's a very intelligent man. He really thought things through, as he always does when he does a game design, to try to close the holes and close off some of that gamesmanship that we are all familiar with from playing war games. So here are our cards. You have an off-map display. This one is Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville is what's shown there. Right, then we have our remaining moves and attacks for the 3 different scenarios. And then we have our player aid card, 2 copies thereof, one for each player, of course. One will have our attack results, your tactical position determination, sequence of play, battle rating summary, HQ removal check, and then, of course, the terrain effects chart. And I always like when they're laid out this way, where you can see what it looks like, it explains what it is, and it'll tell you the effects on your formation, your combat effects, and any zone of control, zone of influence effects. So, as you would expect, this being a Mark Herman game, it is very well designed. Now let's take a look at our counters. All right, so here we have some counters, and it'll tell you what scenario it's from. So we have Chickamauga here, Chancellorsville, and Spotsylvania. And of course, you have Union counters and Confederate counters for the various ones. Of course, you got a big three here with Lee, Jackson, and Stewart. So that's one. They are double-sided, as you can see. And you do have, indications for when you must attack, turn track, etc. So there are some markers sprinkled in certain places. Here we have Fredericksburg, the Wilderness, and Chattanooga. And again, Union on the left. And we have some field works, which flipped over are the construction side. And of course, Confederates here, and you do have Robert E. Lee and a Burnside there. Here's U.S. Grant, Thomas, and William Tecumseh Sherman. There's several Lees on here. Here's another Lee. This one is for the Wilderness, and Bragg for Chattanooga. Moves, attacks remaining. And of course, they're double-sided, as you would expect. So those are the counter sheets. Now we have our maps. So there are, of course, 3 maps. So the first one here, these are fairly large, and I won't fit it all in the shot. But this one is the Fredericksburg Chancellorsville map. So it is sideways, and I apologize for that. Let me turn it, and maybe I can get a better, more complete shot here. So let me pause for a moment. Okay, so here you can see the top, right? Here's the Rapidan River. Lots of roads. This is the, as I mentioned, Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville map. Now, so this is the northern part of the map. The city of Fredericksburg is at the bottom of the map. So if we slide it up, you can see, the terrain is all well defined. You can see the roads, right? Here's the old turnpike, Orange Plank Road, the various rivers, etc. The hills. We have Laurel Hill over here. We slide all the way up to show the bottom of the map. Sorry, I'm shaking the table here. Here's Fredericksburg, right here. Sitting along the Rappahannock. And you have the heights here, Mary's Heights, Railroad, the Massaponax River, etc. Right? So you can see terrain indicating elevation, etc., etc. Compass rose, this direction is north. So that is the Fredericksburg Chancellorsville map. It's a paper map. It is fairly large. So 22 by 34, I believe. This is the Chickamauga Chattanooga map. Again, we'll start near the top here. All right, here's the famous Missionary Ridge. Here's the city of Chattanooga. Here's the Tennessee River, of course, and the Chickamauga River. And Chattanooga Creek coming down this way. We also have Lookout Mountain right here. Here's the Peavine Ridge right here. So you can see this is a lot of ridges, right? Like Missionary Ridge also down here. And the West Chickamauga Creek. Pigeon's Roost Mountain here at the bottom. As you can see over here, this is, as I mentioned, the Chickamauga Chattanooga map. So you can see the terrain is all well defined on these maps. And we'll take a gander at the third and final map. Now this one, of course, is the Wilderness Spotsylvania map. So this kind of overlaps somewhat with the other map, the first map that we saw, the Fredericksburg map, because it does have the Rapidan and the Rappahannock on it. Here's Wilderness Run. You've got the Orange Turnpike as well. The Culpeper Plank Road coming up here, which becomes the Germana Plank Road. An unfinished railroad through here. Lots of woods, right? This is the wilderness map, of course. And then, this is slightly north, I guess, of where we were before in terms of Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg is not on this map, but it's pretty close to being on this map. Let's put it that way. Down here we have Laurel Hill and Hazel Grove, which are on the Fredericksburg map. And if we go all the way to the bottom here, you can see the edge of Mary's Heights. Right, so this would be the south part. Here's the Massaponax River, which is also on the other map. Here's Spotsylvania Courthouse right here. So this is the Wilderness Spotsylvania map. That is the third and final map for this particular game. So again, if you're looking for a good two-player, relatively low to moderate complexity Civil War game designed by one of the legends of wargaming, that would be Mark Herman. This is your huckleberry right here, as they would say. So that's going to do it for this particular edition of the Hexed Encounter channel. My name's Joe. I thank you for watching. Please consider liking, sharing, and/or subscribing if you would. I do appreciate the support. But either way, even if you don't do any of those things, I hope you got something out of the video, and we'll come back and check out something else in the future. So that'll do it, and until next time, as always, happy gaming.